For years, I was taught one rule: without us, you are nothing. A year after I left, I signed a contract that our family had never seen before, and I realized that I had lost only an illusion. If you're listening to this, believe in yourself, even when the whole world is shouting that you're not a leader and can't do it. This story is not a lecture, but an example. Sometimes those closest to you are not a support, but shackles. I will tell you how my life rolled downhill, like a snowball, layer by layer, erasing my dignity, until I stopped and saw the obvious. My future is in my hands. My name is Daniel. I am 32. In our family, there is one rule that has been repeated since childhood: family above all else. Sounds nice, right? Like a quote for a wall calendar. But in practice, it meant one thing: any step to the side is a betrayal. Want something of your own? Going against the grain? Then you're letting your family down. My grandfather started the business back in the 70s. My father took it to a new level. And my older brother was always the star, the favorite, the pride and joy. And me? I was a shadow, the one who worked from morning till night. Spreadsheets, reports, deadlines. Well done. They would nod at me across the table. But as soon as my brother made a joke, all the laughter and attention went to him. We weren't fabulously wealthy, but we were stable. A nice house, 2 cars for my parents, private school for my brother. I earned a decent salary, but I wasn't rich. For me, it was a lot of money, but for them, it seemed normal. It may sound like a trifle, but when it happens every day, every week, every year, a coldness begins to grow inside. You sit at the family table and see the same scene. My brother makes a joke. My father leans back in his chair and laughs. My mother pours wine and says, "Good job, guys." Guys seems to refer to both of us. But she only looks at him. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me. I taught myself not to dwell on it. I clung to what really inspired me: green construction, energy-efficient solutions, recycled materials, collaboration with universities. It was something fresh, something of my own. I saw the future of the company in it, and I believed that I could prove that I was capable of more than being the younger brother in the shadows. But here's the thing. When you've been taught for years that betraying your family is the worst thing you can do, you start to fear even your own initiative. You feel like you're in a cage. Loyalty becomes your religion. The irony is that I wasn't the one who betrayed. They betrayed me. When Lauren came into my life, I had a feeling for the first time that I was finally being seen. Not just the guy who counts numbers, but the man behind the woman everyone raves about. She was exactly who my family wanted to see by my side. Beautiful, charismatic. She would walk into a room and all eyes would be on her. Her laughter filled the space, and everyone seemed to gravitate closer to be near her. The first dinner at my parents' house changed everything. My mother leaned over and whispered, as if it were a big secret, "This is the woman. She will make you a leader." My father nodded, and in his eyes I saw the same approval I had been chasing for years. Can you imagine what that meant to me? I had worked hard my whole life, proving with every number, every project, that I was worthy of their respect. And it turned out that all I had to do was bring home the right bride. It's funny and painful at the same time, but at the time it warmed my heart. I was in love. I was genuinely happy that for the first time I could make my parents happy. Lauren always looked impeccable and easily found common ground with everyone. The family was crazy about her. And that's when the first micro-trigger happened. We were sitting at the table. My brother was cracking jokes about work as usual. Everyone was laughing. And then Lauren, with a smile, said casually, "Without me, he would get lost in his own reports." Everyone laughed even harder. I smiled too, but inside, something clicked. The ice broke. You know that feeling when words seem like a joke, but there's something more to them? That's how it was. It was as if I simply didn't exist without her. I tried to brush it off. "Don't be silly, Daniel. It's just a joke." But the chill remained. Later, when we were alone, I shared with her what was my real dream: the green direction. I told her everything: suppliers, strategy, partnerships with universities. Every detail, every plan. She sat next to me, swirling her glass of wine and listening so intently, as if I were sharing with her the secret to success. She asked the right questions, nodded, and then said, "Let me run this by the family. They'll be more receptive if we present it as a team." It sounded logical. She had charisma and a talent for persuasion. I had numbers and consistency. Together, we really did look stronger. I agreed. And at that moment, without even realizing it, I handed over the most valuable thing I had. Not just slides and tables. My chance. I was an operations manager, OPS. A numbers person, tables, graphs, calculations. That's where I felt confident. That was my battlefield. But the green direction was different. It was more than just business. It was a dream. My vision. My future. I saw how the company could become not just profitable but modern. How we could build not only houses but also a reputation. It was the chance that would allow me to stop being the younger brother in the shadows. I told Lauren everything. From the small stuff, lists of suppliers, tables with materials, to big ideas, working with universities, new partnerships, investment opportunities. I shared every step, every number with her. She sat next to me. She swirled her glass of wine and looked at me as if I were revealing some secret of the world to her. There was admiration in her eyes. And then she put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You're a genius. But if you go to your family with this on your own, they won't listen to you. They only see you as the younger brother who's good with numbers. But if we present it together, they will finally believe us." I sat and listened to her words, and, to be honest, they sounded logical. She had charisma. She knew how to speak, how to charm people. I, on the other hand, was all about dry numbers, diagrams, and formulas. Together, we would indeed look stronger. I said to myself, "She's my fiancée, my partner. We're a team." And I agreed. I trusted her more than I had ever trusted anyone. At the time, I didn't even realize that I was actually handing her the keys to all my work. Not just slides and documents. My chance. My opportunity to prove that I could be something more. It was supposed to be my show. My day. My idea. My chance. I sat in the meeting room next to Lauren. My palms were sweaty. My heart was pounding. But I was ready. Finally, I would be heard. The screen lit up with the first slide. And then my brother opened his mouth. "Lauren and I have developed a new direction." His voice is confident, loud. He makes jokes, everyone laughs. Lauren clarifies the details, agrees. And every line they say sounds like they've been working on this from the beginning. I try to interject a comment. I am interrupted. Again, and again, it's as if I don't exist. And then it hits me. I am just an extra in this room. A figure for decoration. My father sits at the head of the table. And I see something I haven't seen in years. He is smiling from ear to ear. But not at me. At him. Her. "Finally, you and Lauren are a real team. That's what I understand." Everything inside me broke. It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under my feet. I had a chance to say, "Stop. This is my idea. My work." But I looked around. And everyone was looking only at them. Not at me. And I kept quiet. After the meeting, Lauren took my hand. Her fingers gently squeezed mine. Her voice quiet, almost gentle. "Honey, it's for your own good. They don't accept you without me. But now they will." She smiled as if she had just given me a gift. And I tried to believe her. Because she's my fiancée. They're my family. How could they wish me ill? But that chill I felt when my father said real team remained. It didn't go away. And deep down I already knew. This was only the beginning. Several weeks passed after that meeting. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. That it was just a coincidence. That Lauren really wanted to help me, not take away my chance. I repeated this to myself over and over again like a mantra. And then there was the company party. A restaurant, loud music, champagne flowing, the spotlights flashing, the smell of expensive perfume and cigars in the air. I always felt out of place at events like this. You stay in the shadows. A few conversations, a couple of jokes, and you can leave. But Lauren, she was radiant. She literally glowed in the center of the room. She danced, laughed, and gestured as if it were all created for her. And honestly, I admired her. Until I saw something. I looked for her and found her at the bar. She was standing too close to one of our key partners, the same one on whom big deals depended. His hand was on her waist. At first, it seemed accidental, but she didn't move away. She even leaned closer, laughing at his jokes as if he were the most interesting person in the world. Everything inside me tightened. I watched as his fingers lingered on her waist longer than necessary, and I felt like a third wheel, not a husband, just background noise. I didn't make a scene. I didn't go over, I didn't take my hand off her. I stood in the corner with a glass and watched, and I felt like another layer of my dignity was being stripped away. Lauren, I didn't like the way he held your waist. It's networking, Daniel. Don't be petty. The word petty hurt more than his hand on her waist. She raised her eyebrows, as if I had just said something absurd. You're jealous. It's not attractive. You don't want to look insecure, do you? Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was like being punched in the stomach. I wanted to explain that it wasn't about jealousy. It was about respect. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, as if I really was overreacting. I forced myself to calm down. I told myself, it's nothing. Don't exaggerate. But the chill inside me became more palpable. I had no idea what blow was coming next. In our family, all major decisions were always made at so-called family councils. It was almost a sacred ritual. A large oak table in the conference room, a portrait of my grandfather on the wall looking down from above, and suits even on Saturdays when the whole country was resting. For them, it was a game of seriousness. For me, it was a test. Formally, decisions were made by the board of directors, but unofficially, it was the family council, where my father's word was decisive. I was nervous before each of these meetings. I felt not like a business partner, but like a schoolboy standing in front of the blackboard, waiting for the teacher to give him a grade. But this time, I wasn't even warned. I accidentally noticed a block in my brother's calendar labeled, Meeting with Investors. What kind of meeting is it? I asked. He didn't even look up from his phone. Nothing important. Family council. Don't worry. Don't worry. For him, it was nothing important. For me, it was the whole world. I came to the meeting room alone, without an official invitation. And I saw that they were already there. My parents, my brother, and Lauren. They were chatting animatedly, drinking coffee from porcelain cups, laughing. And no one was even surprised that I had walked in. It was as if I wasn't supposed to be there. My father looked at me with that cold half-smile that always sent a chill down my spine. Oh, Daniel, sit down. We were just discussing a new direction. I sat down, and I heard something that tore me apart inside. They officially announced that my brother and Lauren would be leading the Green Project. All my work was stored on a corporate drive with shared access for the department. We never signed any contracts for authorship of ideas. We're family. That became the loophole. My baby. My months of work, my spreadsheets, my ideas. And they presented it as their shared vision. I opened my mouth to protest. But my father beat me to it, not even letting me take a breath. You're a good worker. Very thorough. But someone else has to be the leader. Those words stuck in my head like a nail in a board. A good worker, but not a leader. I repeated them in my mind over and over, as if being interrogated. My mother nodded with complete approval. My brother beamed as if he had just won a medal. Lauren sat with a perfect smile, so confident, as if it had all been decided long ago behind my back. I felt myself boiling inside. It was as if blood was rushing in my ears. I wanted to scream, but my voice was stuck in my throat. It was as if I had been cut off from my own child, and I didn't even have time to cry out. The secretary handed out printouts with the new areas of responsibility. Opposite my name was Support Analyst. Opposite my brother and Lauren was Co-Directors. I left the meeting room feeling like I had just been thrown overboard. And only then did it dawn on me. I had truly been cut off from my ideas. and from the part of me that still believed that family is everything. After that meeting, I walked around as if in a fog. My body was working, but my head was not. I wrote reports, answered emails, and compiled figures in tables. Everything was mechanical, an automaton, inside emptiness, as if I had been broken and only the shell remained. And the main thing was the feeling. I had lost more than just a project. I had lost a piece of myself, something I had put my heart into. One evening, I stayed at the office longer than usual. The clock showed almost 11. When I finally left, the city was already beginning to fall asleep. The roads were half empty, the lights in the shop windows were dimmer than during the day, and there was a slight smell of asphalt in the air after the rain. I was walking to the parking lot when I suddenly saw a familiar car near the hotel. My heart skipped a beat. It was Lauren's car. My first thought was logical. Probably a meeting with a client. She was always involved in business circles. But something stopped me. I don't know what. Maybe the tone of her voice in recent days. Maybe the chill I had carried inside me since the first meeting. I froze on the sidewalk, as if my feet were glued to the ground. And then the door opened. Lauren got out of the car. She wasn't alone. He was there too. Our partner. The same one I had seen her with at the corporate party. They were laughing. Her laughter was too light, too real for it to be a business meeting. He touched her hand as if it were normal. She didn't pull away. On the contrary, she looked as if she enjoyed it. And they went into the hotel together. I stood there like a statue. I could have run after them. I could have taken a photo. I could have shouted. But I did nothing. I just stood there and felt my stomach churning, my throat tightening so that it was difficult to breathe. Time dragged on forever. About 2 hours passed. And then they reappeared. They walked side by side. He held her by the shoulders. She leaned against him as if it had always been that way. And before getting into the car, they kissed. Not quickly, not secretly, openly, like a couple. I saw it with my own eyes. And after that, no explanations or excuses were needed. It wasn't a business lunch. It was more than I was ready to see. I got home before her. I couldn't turn on the light. I just sat in the dark, waiting. And when Lauren came in, smiling, lighthearted, she asked, "Why don't you have the lights on? Is everything okay?" I looked at her and didn't recognize her. A stranger stood before me. The same woman with whom I had planned a future. The same woman to whom I had given my ideas. I wanted to say, "I saw everything." The words burned on my tongue, but it was stuck to the roof of my mouth. Couldn't. Only one thought was spinning in my head. I need proof. Because even if I told them everything now, they wouldn't believe me. They would believe her. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own family. A stranger among those I had been taught to love above all else. After that night, I couldn't look at Lauren the same way I used to. You know how there are moments when everything changes forever? When one scene, one kiss, one gesture shatters the picture in your head. That's how it was for me. Every "how was your day?" sounded fake. As if she were reading a prepared text that had to be rehearsed in front of a mirror. I began to distance myself. And she sensed it. Of course she did. Lauren always knew how to pick up on nuances, not to understand me, but to use me. One evening, my father asked me to come to a small family meeting. I thought, okay, we'll probably talk about clients or a project. Nothing special. I even brought my laptop with me to show a couple of files. But when I walked into the living room, everything became clear at first glance. It was a trap. On the table were printed meeting notes that described me as emotionally unstable and confrontational. I read it and realized that the script had been written before I arrived. Everyone was sitting there. My father was in his favorite chair. My mother was next to him, with that cold concern in her eyes. My brother was sprawled out as if he were the boss. And Lauren was the center of attention. The atmosphere was as if they were about to judge me. My father began with the tone of voice that always hurt my ears. "Son, we're worried about you." And then Lauren started crying. Real tears. I don't know how she managed to turn it on so quickly. She sobbed, wiped her eyes, and said that I had become paranoid, that I suspected her of everything, that sometimes I even raised my voice and she was scared. I sat there stunned. She turned everything upside down. What I saw with my own eyes turned into fiction. And she was the victim. And the worst thing was that my family believed her. Without a doubt. My mother leaned over, handed her a napkin, and hugged her. "Don't worry, dear. We're here for you." Daughter. That word hurt physically. She was a daughter. I was a burden. My brother looked at me with an expression I had seen hundreds of times before. Condescension, almost contempt. "She's more family to us now than you are." Those words cut deeper than any blow. It was a verdict. I tried to explain, to cling to some kind of truth. I saw her with someone else, with my own eyes. But my words dissolved into thin air. They looked at me as if I had gone mad, like a person who had lost his mind and was imagining ghosts. At that moment, I realized, it's me against everyone else. There is no more family above all else. There is them and there is me. And if I want the truth, I have to prove it myself. Not for them. For myself. After that family trap, it became clear to me, words are now worthless. One tear from Lauren, and everyone believes her. I saw it. And I'm paranoid. I repeated this to myself like some endless refrain. Words are worthless. I needed more. I needed ironclad evidence. The chance came by accident, as is often the case with the most important things in life. Lauren once left her laptop at home. She forgot it on the couch, threw down the case, went to a meeting, and the password on her work profile was so simple that it gave me the creeps. The date of our first date. Seriously. It was so ironic that I wanted to laugh through my tears. I stood over the keyboard and thought, is this an invasion? Is this wrong? I'm not a spy. I'm a person who promised myself never to cross the line. And at the same time, I thought, they believed her. If I don't prove it, they will destroy me with their gaze and their words. What is more important, principle or truth? Thoughts were spinning, and my fingers were trembling. I typed in the password. Enter. My heart leapt in a special way. I went into the documents. First, the working sheets she often left there. Tables, notes, contact details. Nothing criminal. Nothing that could instantly destroy the world. But I dug deeper, because I had no other choice. And I found a folder with messenger backups. The name was somehow mundane and prosaic, and I almost didn't dare to click. I clicked, and there they were, dozens of messages. Lines broken down into days, nights, jokes, and plans. At first, only a few phrases caught my eye, but they were like a suspicious clue. He'll never understand. It's convenient for him to be a workhorse. I stopped. I read more, and more. Their correspondence wasn't just about feelings. There were plans, dates, mentions of meetings, notes. Gradually push him out. Draw up documents for us. I felt the world spinning slower, as if someone had pulled a cloudy glass over my eyes, and the words began to appear in huge black letters. It wasn't just a novel. It was a plan. A chill ran down my spine. My hands were shaking so much that the cursor was jerking. I wanted to throw my laptop against the wall, just smash it and get rid of the pain. But another part of me, cold, pragmatic, accustomed to calculating and planning my whole life, said no. Don't panic. Save it. Record it. Evidence weighs more than tears when it comes to the truth. I set to work like a war correspondent. I took screenshots, copied files, and exported the entire folder to an external drive. I made a list of files with dates/times and sent myself a copy by email to record the timestamp. Cheap, but it works when they say I edited something after the fact. Button after button, success after success. The light from the lamp carved pale circles under my eyes. The tea cooled in the mug, and my fingers worked as if in a trance. Periodically, frantic thoughts would rush in. Maybe it's taken out of context? Maybe they were playing a role? Maybe you're getting yourself worked up? But there were direct phrases, specific dates, names, references to documents. These were not random hints. These were plans. When I finished, my elbows buckled from fatigue. I turned off the screen and sat in the dark. The room was quiet, only the clock ticking like a judge. The feeling was strange, a mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief that I now had a weapon. Emptiness from the realization that I had been betrayed by those I considered closest to me. I looked at the folder with the copies and heard a single thought playing in my head. Sooner or later, I will put this on the table. And then they will no longer be able to laugh at me. Sooner or later, the truth will become visible just like in the screenshots, black and white. And that was my new fuel. But along with that, there was another feeling, guilt. Because I had violated privacy. Because I had become the person I had distanced myself from all my life. And that was bitter. And I kept repeating to myself, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this for the truth. Those words sounded like a spell that kept me from breaking down. And it was with this folder, these screenshots, and this cold determination that I realized. Now I have a chance. A chance not just to tell the truth, but to show it in a way that no one could deny. I thought long and hard about how to do it. Wait longer, gather more evidence, go to a lawyer. But every day with Lauren was like a knife to my throat. I saw her smile, the same one I once adored. And now that smile meant only one thing. Confidence that she was in control. That I would keep quiet. That I would swallow it. I was boiling inside. And then I decided, I'll tell them everything at the next family meeting. Where they like to make decisions. Where they always kept me in the shadows. Let them look me in the eye after that. The meeting room was the same heavy oak table, the same portrait of my grandfather looking down from above, a silent witness. Coffee in porcelain cups, the aroma strong, almost bitter. The atmosphere was cold and formal, even though it was a family meeting. They were all already sitting there. My father, mother, brother, and Lauren. Their gazes were ice-cold and neutral, like judges. And I realized, no one expected me to take the initiative this time. I opened my laptop. My heart was pounding, but my voice sounded calm. I have something you need to see. Screenshots appeared on the screen. Messages from Lauren and her partner. Their jokes about me. He'll never understand. Their plans. Push him away. Make it look like it's our fault. Dates. Names. Numbers. I laid it all out evenly and clearly, like a news anchor. Inside, I was shaking, but I forced my voice to remain firm. I was waiting for shock. I was waiting for some kind of excuse. I was waiting for my mother to say, this can't be true. For my father to finally see how far things had gone. For my brother to at least stop laughing. But instead, my father sighed. Barely audibly. It looks like fragments of personal correspondence. Are you ready to explain to the police why you had access to it in the first place? You're just jealous. I wanted to say yes, but I knew that the correspondence on her laptop was thin ice. Without a lawyer and forensics, their lawyers would wipe me out. I needed to grow up faster than I needed revenge. My mother just shook her head, as she always did when she wanted to show disappointment. My brother couldn't help but laugh into his fist. The stench of contempt hung in the room. And then Lauren looked up at me, calm, cold, without a hint of embarrassment. And she said quietly, but so that everyone could hear, you'll never find anyone better than me. And without your family, you're nothing. She said it with complete seriousness. Not as an insult, not as a shout, just as a fact, as the sum of all their views. I sat there with the evidence in front of me, with all those files, screenshots, and correspondence. And suddenly I realized, proving anything to these people was pointless. They had already made their choice. And that choice was not me. After that meeting, I realized that the point of no return was already behind me. I could have continued to deceive myself, pretending that everything would work out. But no, there was no turning back. I sat at home, holding the ring in my hand and staring at it for a long time. It was supposed to be a symbol of love, of the future, of family. And now it was just a piece of metal. A cold reminder of how I had been used. Like a brand that screamed, fool. The next day, I put the box with the ring on the table in front of Lauren. The ring hit the table with a dull thud. The sound was strangely similar to a full stop. The words were difficult to say, but they came out simply. That's it. We're done. And you know what? She wasn't even surprised. No spark in her eyes, no attempt to save anything. She just crossed her arms over her chest, tilted her head, and said calmly, almost dismissively, "Do you really think someone else will accept you? Without a company, without a family?" Her words fell like a stone. She believed in them. Absolutely. In her world, I was nothing without them. I didn't answer. I didn't shout, argue, or debate. I just got up and left. I wrote a short letter to my father. "I'm leaving the company. Don't look for me." I saw no point in explaining more. They wouldn't listen anyway. There were no ears for my truth. That evening, I found myself in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. A small room with peeling walls, a TV that only caught 2 channels, the smell of cheap cigarettes ingrained in the furniture. The bed was hard, the blanket thin. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, and I felt only one thing. I had lost everything. My family, my job, my fiancé, my future. I was broken. Inside, there was absolute emptiness. I didn't even have tears, just a buzzing in my head and an endless why. But in the morning, I woke up to the sun's rays shining through the dirty blinds. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something else. Relief. Small, fragile, but real. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I was alone. But for the first time in many years, I didn't feel the burden I had been carrying around with me all the time. That stone pressing on my chest. I lay on that cheap mattress and realized, this could be the beginning. Perhaps the worst day of my life was my first step toward a new life. The first few weeks after the breakup were like rehabilitation. Like after an accident from which you emerged alive, but covered in bruises and broken inside. I woke up and caught myself thinking a strange thought. I don't have to go to the office. I don't have to listen to my brother joking about my dry numbers. I don't have to hide my ideas so they won't be stolen. I don't have to pretend that everything is fine when everything is burning inside. And it was both scary and strangely liberating. You know, like when a chain is removed from your neck, and at first it's even hard to breathe. I opened old files with my work on green construction. All those tables, diagrams, and ideas that I had put away in a drawer for years because they wouldn't understand, or it wasn't the right time. I flipped through the pages and thought how much I was afraid to even show. And then, for the first time, a bold, almost crazy idea popped into my head. To start my own company. A small startup. No pomp, no gold signs, and no large offices. Just a place where my ideas would have a right to exist. I had almost no money, nor did I have any connections in the right circles. I rented a tiny co-working space, a room with white walls and the smell of cheap coffee from a vending machine. I sat there at night, printing out my business plan and constantly asking myself, what if they were right? What if I really never become a leader? And it was during this period that Mia came into my life. We knew each other from university. We used to sit next to each other in project management classes. I hadn't heard from her in a long time, and then suddenly, a message. She saw my name on the list of conference participants and decided to write, "Hi, long time no see." Everything was mundane. Everything was accidental. But it is from such small things that big changes begin. We met for coffee. And after just an hour of conversation, I felt what I had been missing so much with Lauren. Sincerity. No games, no roles, no masks. I told her everything. About the startup, about my ideas, about how I was basically kicked out of my family. She listened attentively, didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix my story to suit herself. And at the end, she said a simple phrase that hit me harder than any evidence from my laptop. You know, I always believed that you could do something of your own. You're too stubborn and too smart to spend your whole life in someone else's shadow. I sat there, looked at her, and felt something come alive inside me. Because for the first time, someone saw me as more than a workhorse or a little brother. She saw a person capable of creating something important. Mia agreed to help with the startup. Not out of pity, not for show, but because she truly believed in it. And gradually, I felt that I was no longer alone. Together, we could do what my family never believed in. And that thought was much stronger than any of their judgments. A year passed. Honestly, it was the hardest year of my life. Mia and I worked without days off. We took on any small jobs, repairs, consultations, even small eco-projects that barely covered our expenses. Anything to stay afloat. There were nights when I woke up at 3. I lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and thinking, what if they were right? What if I'll never be a leader? What if I'm just a workhorse who's confused her place? These thoughts gnawed at me from within. And every time Mia was there, she would get out of bed, bring me water, sit down next to me, and say quietly but confidently, "You've already done the hardest part. You left. Now you just have to prove that you were right." And those words were more powerful than any motivational book or lecture. Because they came from a person who saw me as weak and broken, and still believed in me. And we proved it. We got in through a pilot project. A $35,000 microproject for a university laboratory, with a KPI of 11 to 13% energy savings. The results were 14.2%. After that, we were invited to bid on the campus. Our startup signed a contract with a large international investor. The amount of the large contract was incredible for us, $4.8 million in 2 phases with an option for another $2 million. The project is an eco-friendly campus for a prestigious university. The contract exceeded anything my family company had ever done in terms of volume. I sat in a small office, a desk covered with papers, a laptop, 2 cold cups of coffee, and looked at the signed document. I reread it over and over, as if afraid that the letters would disappear. And I couldn't believe that this was happening to me. The news spread quickly. First, my brother wrote one short message, "Can we talk?" Then my father called. His voice was even a little gentle. "You're still our son. Maybe it's time to come back?" But I was no longer the boy who sat in the shadows and was afraid to look people in the eye. I replied calmly, without anger or fear, "No, I'm no longer with you." And this time it wasn't an emotional no. It was a final decision. Instead, Mia was there with me. We celebrated our victory with a bottle of cheap wine in a co-working space. We sat among folders, half-drunk coffee, and a pile of unwashed mugs. And I didn't care at all that it wasn't a restaurant with white tablecloths or a fancy party. Because for the first time in my life, I was celebrating a victory that belonged only to me. They always said, "Without us, you're nobody." But the truth turned out to be quite different. It was without them that I finally became myself. For a long time, I thought that the biggest victory was a contract. Signed agreements. Numbers in my bank account. The fact that my startup had surpassed the family business and proved that I could do without them. But later I realized that the real victory was completely different. I began to catch myself thinking that I had changed with Mia. With her, for the first time, I felt valuable not because of my last name, not because of the benefits, not because I was useful to the cause. She saw me as a person, just a person, and that was enough. She knew all my failures, all the doubts, all the fears that I had hidden for years, even from myself. She saw me in my weakest moments, when I sat over tables at night, when I broke down, when I was silent and couldn't find the words, and she still stayed by my side. We worked at night. I joked, sometimes even stupidly, just to relieve the tension. And she laughed, sincerely, without pretense. When I had doubts, when I caught myself thinking, what if they were right? Mia reminded me, I believed in you back then, in college, when no one else did. Her support wasn't loud or theatrical. She didn't shout to the whole world that she believed in me. She was just there. Her quiet presence kept me going better than any loud words. And that's what kept me from drowning. One evening, we sat on the roof of a co-working space. Old chairs, a warm breeze, the city below us, glowing with thousands of lights. I held a plastic cup of coffee in my hands, and she held an unfinished bottle of cheap wine. And in that simplicity, there was more happiness than in any celebration with my family. Mia looked at me and said quietly but confidently, I'm glad they were wrong. I laughed. Who exactly? She looked me straight in the eye and replied, "Everyone who said you couldn't do it." And then I felt a weight lift from my chest. Not because I had finally proven something to others, but because I had found someone I didn't have to prove anything to. I was betrayed by those I considered closest to me, but it was because of this that I found true love. And for the first time in my life, I began to build a life not for someone else, but for myself. It's strange to think that only a year has passed since I sat in a cheap motel, staring at the cracked ceiling, convinced that my life was over. Back then, I looked at the peeling walls, listened to the old air conditioner humming, and thought I had lost everything. My family, my job, my fiancé, my future. But now I see that I only lost an illusion. What I called family and love was actually a trap, a chain that I wore for years and didn't even notice. And only when I broke free from it was I able to breathe deeply for the first time. My startup is growing faster than I could have imagined. Mia and I are building not only a business but also a life together. And I know that I have someone by my side who will never say, "Without me, you are nothing." On the contrary, she reminds me that I have always been someone, even when others did everything they could to make me believe otherwise. My brother writes to me from time to time. My father sometimes calls. They talk about family traditions and a shared future. But now I don't have that old tightness in my chest. No guilt, no need to explain or justify myself. I can just say no, and I feel at peace, because now I know the betrayal was not in my leaving. The betrayal was in what they did. They always repeated, "Without us, you are nobody." And the irony is that it was without them that I finally became myself.